Welcome to the Chill Zone.
Help us celebrate you.
On the Chill Zone.
We are joined by Mr. Alieu. This time on the Chill Zone. It's been long awaited as well. Most people were like, okay, when are we getting Mr. Alieu on the show? Yeah. You know that? Yes. But yes, welcome
on the Chill Zone,
welcome on the Chill Zone, Mr. Alieu. We hope that you are definitely going to be having fun with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is very nice.
I like that.
I hope to have fun and whatever that means in this context.
let me get started. Now, what do you define as fun?
Fun is bro, why do you have to do this?
Yes, we're starting with you, so you need to tell us what's fun. What do you define as fun?
Fun is anything that makes you happy. I mean, it's not that deep. It's just anything that keeps you, joyful. Mm-hmm. Something that keeps you, away from the melancholia and the deep sadness and the constant anxiety of being on this earth. If that makes any sense.
Okay. That's very strong. That's very strong.
Well, Ali, we've been seeing you on several movements and, representing the voice of the young people of this country, especially a certain group of young people who feel they're left out, in terms of looks, in terms of education, in terms of intellectual status, for Gambia. And I call you unique because you don't follow most of the protocols of what people call intellectual, what people call formal, what people call diplomacy or whatever. You're just yourself and you're just doing what you do, how you like it or how you think it's all right. And that confidence is not what so many young people have. Everybody wants to follow the normal trend of doing things. I need to wear a suit and a tie to go on a formal meeting. I need to have my hair cut. I don't have to wear a rasta because I'm going to be looked at a certain way. I have to go to uni, have my bachelor, have my degree, be highly educated and all of that. What's your definition of being an intellectual or being professional in a Gambian community or society?
I mean, I think we should be able to deconstruct some of these notions of what is the Gambian society, who is the Gambian, what is this creature who is called the Gambian made up of, what are the things that you can see in a person and say, hey, Kimom Gambian, Gambian ye. We hear these things, but what do they really mean? I think we must be able to come to terms with the fact that there is no such thing as a Gambian. There is no such thing as these constructed categories of who is a Gambian and how a Gambian acts like, or when you say good things and nice things, everybody's like, oh, Kimom Tubabla. He always keeps his word. That's the Tubab right there. So all of these constructed categories of being the good and clean person and the constructed categories of being the failure, the dropout, the push out, and the forgotten of the society, all of these categories are categories that were created by a certain norm, a certain culture, a certain sort of values that benefit from these categories. And that said, my definition of an intellectual and a professional is that, first of all, every intellectual is a byproduct of a certain class system. You have the professional intellectual who more or less is like the policy makers, for example, the governor of the central bank, the economists in the banks, and all these people, these professional intellectuals who serve corporate interests or otherwise NGO interests or any of these establishment intellectuals. And then you have the organic intellectuals who arise from a certain class that is, or a certain system that is budding. For example, you have with the advent of what we will call the Gambian music scene, you had a whole new PR system. How you have a whole host, people who host shows. These are all form of intellection, but then you cannot categorically define them as intellectual. They go beyond the pale of the traditional intellectual definition. And then you have the intellectual who is a product of a system that he or she was born to destroy. And this is what we would call the revolutionary intellectual. and this is what is missing in these times. You know, because everybody, like you were saying, everybody just wants to, you know, conform, and conformity is the great ill of modernity of our time. You know, where even people conform without even knowing they're conforming. Even the whole rebellion to conformity becomes a brand that is commodified and sold by capitalism. You know, it becomes just another thing you just, you know, you can don, you know. Like I was telling my friend the other time, you know, a lot of people say, oh, Immortal, you are a rebel, you know, and it fills me with anxiety sometimes.
Do you consider yourself to be a rebel?
I mean, I don't really care for these tags, you know. I just know that I wake up every day and I just want to have a joyful existence on earth, and I want to be a person who, you know, give up his life for the cause of the people in utmost sincerity and in utmost humility, knowing that you really as an individual cannot change the course of history, but it is the collective masses of the people that change history.
But you know, it's normal to be a rebel, to be rebellious. It's normal to...
It's actually cute.
It is. I mean, I hosted Mr. Baba Silla, who's one of the finest writers Gambia has in this country. And he's a very rebellious writer. That doesn't make him a bad person. You know, he's very intellectual. He just has a certain way of doing things. And he says it as it is.
Yes.
And this is what we don't want to accept most times. People want you to make it look sweet, you know, refetal, like you know, we always say in our community.
I'll give you an example of what it means. You know, when they talk about rebellion and it is considered bad, it's because rebellion trumps the notion of the good and the bad. Because good and evil are things that are constructed by society, by religion, by social constructs, and they are not definite categories. They need, one needs the other to exist. You must have the dropout for you to have the kid who is very good going to school. You must have the darkness for there to be light.
So there's always a need for contrast.
Yes, they have the dialectical relationship, you know, and so our society constructs these categories, because if you don't have a rebel, and if you don't have Alieu being considered a rebel who dropped out of school and has dreadlocks, probably smokes weed and drink alcohol, how can you have, you know, let's say Maria Makoli, who is the good girl, and you know, she evolved, she went to school and she's doing her thing, and you know, Alieu is just here being a nuisance. You know, you must have these categories. You know, these categories help in society's creation of this controlled human being. You know, so this controlled human being, he goes on through their life thinking he's doing something. And so this is the routine of this conformist human being in the Gambia. Goes to school, primary school, junior school, high school, O-level, A-level sometimes, university, goes for a scholarship, comes back, have a nice job, a nice car, a nice house at the posh side of town, you know, with the advent of the real estate. And then, you know, they have a trophy wife or the trophy husband, those a big wedding, it's all over social media, right? And then what happens is, towards then they get a midlife crisis, like, you know, and then you see them, they see you, they're like, Alieu, you know, I used to be like you. I was like, nope. You know, I used to be rebellious. Like, I was like, I'm not a rebel. I'm just doing what I feel is right. You don't have to. You know, it's like when they put you in this exotic little category, where people just look at you and admire you, and then they measure up their social indifference to your lived experience. And I was like, you cannot do that. You cannot equate your fantasy for rebellion with my everyday lived experience.
Now, just not to cut you. Speaking of fantasies, now, does the life that is being portrayed on social media can also affect the way we live?
Of course. I mean, we live in the age of narcissism, and who benefits from narcissism? It's capitalism. It is the big business, and it pushes this narrative of you just being inadequate all the time, and we graft and craft these perfect lives on social media, because social media is like the actualizing of how I want to be, right? But I'm not there. But then the danger is when you start believing the things you're putting on Facebook. You're believing that you are that Facebook personality in real life. That's where the problem is. You know, you can craft your life. I mean, it's not a problem to dream. But the problem is when you think you are really living the dream right now. And when you do it for the likes and the notifications and the shares and all of these things. That's the time when you start censoring yourself. You know, you want to speak a certain truth, but would it get appeal? You know, would it be accepted?
Yes, where
Will
people
it go viral?
Will
Yes.
it go viral, right?
Yes.
So I think social media is one of those late capitalist narratives that that has been crafted so beautifully, and it's going to, like, if we don't wake up to the destruction that social media is going to wrought on our communities, we will be confronted with a very ugly creature, and this will be this social media creature who will grow up from amongst us, and we all are victims of this one way or the other, you know, and it's going to be difficult to be able to confront this reality. So, but this is not to say, oh yeah, we have to censor people from using Facebook, but how do we responsibly, you know, create community? We are creating lonely cultures with social media. Everybody is on their phone,
True.
me included, and all of us, you know, and you sit with people, they're still on their phones. You want to talk to somebody, they don't even see you for who you are.
Nope.
Like, you know that phrase, I see you or I hear you, they gain more importance in this age because people don't hear you. It's like, you are talking to me, I'm on my phone. Yeah, wow. You know, that's very hilarious. But I didn't really hear what you said. I heard a fraction. So we are a generation that hear fractions and see half faces.
And beats
because
and beats.
because I don't want to, this video is gonna, this WhatsApp status that runs very fast, or this Instagram
and you need to
status.
catch that before it
I need to
goes.
catch it. So I just, hey, Muna, what's up, you know? So it's like that. How do we create cultures that hold our young back?
Sure.
You know, how can you create societies where people can appreciate the winds that blow in the trees, how the leaves move? You know, you talk about this thing in the next day, people are like, you're crazy. What leaves are you talking about? What are leaves? You know, so
Let's talk about, did you choose to be a school dropout, or it just happened that you got bored in the school system and you said, you know what, I'm getting out of the system? What happened?
I left. I mean, I voluntarily walked out and never looked back. I got so bored. So in 2006, I was reading. So I started reading when I was in grade 2, right? And I was continuously reading throughout. And I was going to school.
What were you reading? Science?
Novels. And so by grade 6 though, 2004, I started.
So were you reading Mills and Bones like we all did in school? Was that what you read?
No.
Or philosophy? That sort of thing. You know.
No, I started reading. There was this novel I read called Stick of the Dump, and then you had Animals of Farringhood and the Nancy Drew series. If some of you are the Agatha Christie series.
You were reading that in grade 2, bro.
Yeah. So and so by grade 6 I had this book called the ABC of Continental Philosophy. It's about European philosophy. So I started reading that. Grade 7, somebody gave me the fundamentals of Marxist-Leninist philosophy, which is a revolutionary philosophy.
Oh my God.
And then I never looked back. Like, I was like, I'm done. I'm looking
back at me in grade 2. You know what I was doing? I was looking at pictures of family planning, like mother, father, sister, brother, and I'm making my own imagination of my family, if it looks like that on the book or not. Like that, I was doing a lot of imaginary reading at that time.
I think what I don't really believe in the spirituality and all this religious stuff, but there is something to the extent of being called to a higher light. And
so have you been called to a higher light?
No, I'm not speaking about myself.
Okay.
I'm giving a general.
We're gonna like, bro. Spiritual callings, like get us to the spiritual callings.
All of us, every human being, early on in your life, you start realizing what you really want. Right? I mean, at grade 2, I knew that I wanted to read, but it was not like I have this whole deep reflection about, I should seek knowledge and wisdom and understanding. No, I just knew that I want, things like, I didn't know, I just grabbed a book I was given to by a teacher, Mr. Mane. I still remember him, bless him. And I read this book, and then I was hooked. So I started reading. And so when I started reading that book in grade 7, I sit there and look at my teachers. I was like, really? I can't do this. This is too much. So I got expelled 2 times. Then the last time I went back to school, I was like, one day I went to my mom. I was like, we have to talk. I really can't.
This ain't gonna work.
You know my brother.
I know this is not going to work for me.
You know? And I was like, I'm not gonna do this. Yeah.
How did they take it?
Oh, it was bad. I mean, of course, you know it's gonna be bad. Like, what the fuck are you gonna do?
They're like, yo, what's going on?
At what age did you make that decision?
I was 14.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah,
You left
and-
school at 14.
Yeah. And
Okay.
then I became part of the All African People Revolutionary Party, which is a global Pan-Africanist movement. And
So has everyone in that Pan-African also done what you did?
No.
So
I
you're-
was the
so you're the
only
only one
one.
that took a conscious decision.
Yes, to leave.
to
No,
leave.
these are people who were part of. They were professionals. They were going to school. I was the only one. I remember I used to go to the National Library in Banjul, and this guy used to kick me out. It's like, "Hana ya wuru no school time." I was like, "But this is my school."
True.
He was like, "Nah, you can't be here. Go home."
So how did you get yourself educated?
I stole a lot of books, and I don't
stole?
regret that. Yes,
do you
in the
still-
libraries. You know.
Do you still have those books?
I don't know whether I do. I plead the fifth. But and also I used to sell weed, and then I used to
my God.
use that to buy books at Timbuktu.
Wow.
You know, one of the amazing experiences. It's like one of those things that I like think back as like, oh, I'm a fucking legend. I did that shit. You know? But yeah, because there was no amenities. It was not like I really wanted to do it because it was risky and I was young.
Sure.
But I did it because everybody around me was doing it.
Yeah.
You know? So it was just one of those things where you can just do it. You know? You wake up, everybody around you is smoking weed anyways and selling weed.
yeah.
You know? And,
So you just
and
indulge
who
in
cares
tourism.
about laws when the laws, you talk about you got this right, you have that right, but these rights, you have them. Okay, you have the right to go to school. Where is the school? You have the right to help. Go to the hospital. What would you find there? So this is the type of conversation I've been trying to bring up in the Gambia right now.
I know.
When will we stop talking about rights that we cannot realize? How do we talk about the basics of humanity? No poor person wants to sit down and you say, oh, we came for civic education. We want to tell you that you have the right to life, right to education. And he's looking at his kids and they're hungry. And he's looking at his nephew who is sick and cannot go to the hospital because there's no money. And you want that guy to sit and listen to, we think you have rights and we want to talk to you about it. No, the hungry person doesn't have time for the theories and the, these ruminations of this civil society discourse. How do we shift and forget activism or forget social movement leadership or whatnot. We need to be thinking about this collectively as people who live in this country and across this continent. How do we talk about the basic bare necessities of life and how do we guarantee it for our people? This is not about whether, oh no, and you find people, yeah, you are the one who's supposed to do, you are the activist. No, I'm not an activist. I'm just an ordinary everyday person who was turned into a revolutionary by the vicissitudes of time. I didn't choose to be this. I could have a life like this, like have a radio show and do chill shit, and right?
Yeah,
And
our chill zone is not a chill zone.
Like
This
we
is
told you,
chill.
we will censor you, man.
Okay.
But it's the
I'll
real
censor
thing.
myself.
But let me ask you this question, because you are. I wish a lot of people were as open-minded as the way as you. I feel we as young people have been carried away by vanity.
Yeah,
And it's affecting us.
all of us.
And consciously or subconsciously, we are guided by what we see visually around us, especially technology. But going back to reading, I was sent this question, which actually transformed your life, the power of knowledge. Why do you think that this is not a culture that's embraced in Gambia? Why don't we as young people read? Because if you took a check of $100,000 and put it in a book and give it to a young man on the street today, he would throw it.
Yeah,
They wouldn't read it.
that's the problem.
So what's the culture? Why is it us as people, or is it just that we are preoccupied by other things that we do not think that we can be found in the knowledge that is in books?
What the problem is with this country, when you look at it, is first people live in very abject poverty. And like I said, reading is extracurricular activity.
Okay.
At the end of the day, knowledge is a foundation. But what is knowledge? What do you prioritize as knowledge? Like when I pull out a book talking about postmodernist identity politics, those that relate to or not, it's still knowledge. But the person who is going to the farm will really need knowledge on how to farm, you know. So I think it's relative. And also, when we talk about the reading culture, I encourage reading. Reading is like the truth, right? We have to read. But at the end of the day, when we measure up people's ability to be in this world and to look at this world consciously in a way that can be profound and deeply rooted in truth and honesty, if we measure that up to reading just books, then we fail to grasp the fact that there are different ways and ways of knowing and ways of understanding the world. Like when you look at one of the most messed up things that had happened to us going to school, I mean, some of people will remember this. You know, they used to talk about there's 3 forms of history. There's the how do you see this word? Archaeological history, and then there is the written history, and then there's the oral history.
Yes.
But the weakest form of history is the oral history.
It's the oral form of history, yes.
And then you look back and you realize all of our history as a people
It's
is
all oral. True.
And even what you wrote was oral in the beginning.
True.
You know? But then they downplay this oral narration. And with that happens, then when the Jali or the griot speaks about your history, you're like, yeah, it's oral history, it's the weakest one. I can't trust this, you know? So there was this colonizing form of this colonial understanding of knowledge, and we must move away from it. You know, there are people who are intelligent, who are wise, but they don't read books, you know, but they will say the most profound things. You know, they will do the most profound things. They live the most conscious of lives, right? So I think it's in as much as it is important for us to read, and our generation, we don't have that. All we have is books. We have to read. But because of the sound bites and the 3-letter words and the 160 characters on Twitter, we don't have time to read. The people tell you, hey, your status update is too long. I don't have time to read this. I was like, then it's not meant for you.
True.
You know, life is very simple. You don't, you know, people are like, yeah, I saw you this thing, but yeah, I cannot read it.
Facebook, boy, been a Facebook for good at Rob.
Yeah, I was like, okay, this is not meant for you. There's a core audience that will read it. But I think it's important that we read.
Is that why you choose Facebook over Twitter?
Yes. And Twitter is just
books.
and okay, honestly, if you're gonna organize around activism and stuff, Facebook is more viable because there's more Gambians active on Facebook than Twitter.
Sure.
Twitter is just this little group of Gambians who, you know, very nice brothers and sisters.
Say it as you said it before.
Say it more. The Gambians on Twitter are. Say it as you said it before.
I mean, okay, I need to frame this, right?
Say
this is very subjective and is rooted in my experience, and in no way is it objective or to say that is the absolute truth. I'm not a bearer of absolute truths anyway. But it's like an encampment of the Gambian petty bourgeois, you know. Not necessarily even the petty bourgeois, but what you will call the lumpen bourgeois. So I'll break it down. So when you look at in Marxist dialectical materialism, they have like 3 categories. In every society, you have the bourgeoisie, which is the managerial business class that own things, right? And then you have the working class, the proletariat, right? And then you have the lumpen proletariat, who are like beggars, sex workers, students, the ones who don't have a classically defined job. Now, what you find in Gambia is the creation of a lumpen bourgeois, a bourgeoisie that is supposed to own stuff, but they don't have no job. You feel me? And they exist in certain places.
Yes.
You can see them. They're like these creatures of comfort, right?
Yeah.
And we can. It's not a monolithic class. All of us sometimes run into it and come back out. It's like it's a confluence, right? And I think That's why if Gambia is even going to develop, we must have conversation on the class situation in this country. And then you hear people say, yeah, yo, I'm low class. I was like, of course, I don't want to have a class. I want to live in a classless society. I want to live in a society where nobody is placed, there is not these invisible boundaries between us. You know, there is no us and them.
True.
You know, I want to see a communist society which is completely classless, you know. So, yeah.
But then the importance of education is still needs to be highlighted, you know, in whatever form of education that people choose to take.
Even school.
Yes. So that means young people still need to take their education seriously. They need to read, they need to write, they need to know what they're learning, which is more important. I mean, there's a difference in you going to school, but you don't even know what you are learning in the first place. Some children get totally confused about what they're taught in school because they can't relate with it. You know, you can't relate with certain novels that you read, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. We don't have Snow White, we don't have the Seven Dwarfs. We don't see them.
Yeah, now we have
yes,
Princess Halima.
Princess Halima, more African stories, and
we have Fatu.
tales.
We have the story of Fatu that's coming up as well.
Great.
Yes,
Great.
Fatu, Juga has embraced that already. She's like she's the only real Fatu. The rest of the Fatus are leftover Fatus.
Fake, huh?
Yes.
So the power of education needs to be still emphasized to the young generation.
I mean, when we talk about education, we have to also know what type of education, like you were alluding to, in the fact that people go to school and learn Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and then there's a whole chapter in our history about Mungo Park. Like I care about knowing about Mungo Park, really? Like a lone Scottish or British guy went and died on the river, and the people, and then you have like and then you have
you have a whole exam.
About who was Mungo. Who cares about Mungo Park? Who told him to come and die here? Anyway, you know. So we need to be able to find a way to decolonize the curriculum.
Yes.
And this is a movement that has been gaining momentum across the continent. Some of you might remember the Feast Must Fall movement in South Africa. That became, you know, they're talking about decolonizing curriculum. The same thing in Kenya, in Ghana. You know, I was recently in Ghana, and this was one of the conversations we had for like 2 days straight. You know, how do we decolonize the African curriculum? You know, how do we center our own stories? You know, you don't go to China and you see them talking about Marco Polo.
Of course not.
They talk about their own people. Everywhere on earth, they talk about their own history and their own trajectories and their own ways of being in this world. We are the only people who are still here studying.
Oh boy, our lawyers still wear those white things.
I swear.
Our magistrates still have those whites.
Bro, and you know how expensive those things are?
Yes,
those
the gowns.
like £1,000 or something.
I'm telling
like
you, the white wigs.
You can feed Africa with
the
that,
white
like,
wigs.
honestly.
We still have those.
Like,
hey, did you see the police, the IGP of police?
Yes, they have the white,
the gloves. I was like, it's too hot for
and
this,
they still be blowing the pipes.
Yes. So
you know the wind pipes. Events. I'm like, Rastafari, what is wrong with y'all?
I know. It's like, how nice would it be for lawyers at the bar when they are graduating or whatever they're doing? They have all these technical names. You know, you wear your haftan or whatever. Like, in your property. Like,
no, look at seriously, like your haftan. Yeah. Nobody's shooting. You wear your haftan, you wear your African clothes.
You look nice.
And wear your natural hair.
Yeah. Yes. You know, you can have dreads and go represent somebody. Like, why can't you have dreads and be a minister in this country? Why can't you have dreads and be a judge?
Or be in the bank.
Yes, be in the bank, be a manager, be a diplomat.
I was gonna ask you about that. Now that you're a dropout, I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it even like in a bad way. Like I'm just saying it.
Now that you're a dropout,
it's okay. It's okay. I'll survive.
No, but you accept being a dropout.
Yes.
You do, right?
Yes.
You accept it.
Yes.
So I'm just saying, for other young people who are out there who are also dropouts, you know, how do you manage to get a sustainable job in this country without a high school graduate certificate to testify, to show your educational history?
There is a very,
since it is a formality in our country or anywhere that you go to, that you have to show your credentials, your experience, blah blah blah, to have a job. How do you intend to have a job in this country?
There is this very important concept in the Gambia, and don't laugh when I say it, right? But this is a philosophical way of seeing the world. It's called Dangam. Right?
I like that.
So, you know, I remember on my first job, I worked with the Standard newspaper, you know, as an editorial writer and an editor. And I went to, I've known Serif, right? And he was like, yeah. I was like, you know, I came there. He was like, can you write an editorial? I was like, yeah. I've been writing editorial. I mean, I knew I could write, right? And all I did was just go and Google, like, hey, how do you write an editorial, And then I wrote an editorial. It was on the 1st of May, I could remember, so it was Workers' Day.
Yeah.
So I already have the stuff in my head. Workers' Day is a communist, actual, working class day, fighting for, workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chain, stuff like that. And I wrote one, and it was like, it's good. I was like, this is it. This is what I have to do to get a job. I will do it. And I became one of the best editorial writers in the Gambia, And so the thing is, and there's another important thing that we have to remember, is that young people in this country go get a job or whatnot, but you'll still be broke.
True.
The people are on the
You're saying even with a job you're gonna be broke.
No, the people, the brokest of people are the ones with jobs. I would tell you that.
So I think we need to have very honest conversation. There's some things about this country that we treat as so sacrosanct. We don't want to talk about it. Employment in this country sucks, honestly, right? And the people who work are struggling to make ends meet, and even the people you think are not.
Yep.
Like you see some people, they're driving their nice cars, they're going to go work and coming back, but they're literally struggling. But with this whole sutura thing, people don't have to know about my condition.
Yep.
But then
if I tell you how many people are calling your phones to borrow money,
exactly,
and you're surprised, like,
I thought you were rich. I thought you were mid.
Yeah, why are you borrowing money from looking at it from a low class,
low class guy,
working lady?
So this is the thing is we need to have honor, and Gambia doesn't even have a minimum wage. Like there's no law to guarantee minimum wage. You have companies in this country. I'm not going to name companies who are exploiting the people, exploiting them, making so much money out of their bags,
Hallelujah.
and they, you will find them, like the type of companies that everybody knows they're making money.
True.
Like it's not even strange to anyone. But then the working masses are suffering. It's all over this country. It's not a strange phenomenon. How do we overturn that? A company is only working when the workers are working.
True.
You can be the manager, own something. Say, I own this studio. Or I own this phone, right? I own a factory that, let's say, I own Apple. Go and sit there and say, all you workers, you're too much. Go home. The factory will not work. But even if you're not there, as long as the workers are there, the factory will work.
True.
So the most important unit, the most important element in the company is the working class. And they should be respected, and they should be honored, and they should be given the just things that they own. The surplus that the company gets, the profit tag that you get is only there.
Are the workers ready to own it? That's our problem.
Because the problem is that the capitalists, these petty mercantile capitalists that we have in this country, they strike fear into the heart of the workers. If you do anything, you're gone.
True.
But I was at this hotel recently, and there was a worker strike. Within 30 minutes, they granted them their needs. You know why? Because they're all united.
Yes.
The manager was the one serving us water.
Yeah.
I was like,
Unity is strength.
this is good.
Unity is strength.
And so the working, there needs to be strong. And this is one of the things we're working on. How do we create strong trade unions in this country? We need to push. When I was in Ghana, the teachers went on a strike. They negotiated with the government. They had a lawyer. They took a lawyer to negotiate on their behalf. And they got everything they wish. Because they were united. That in the Gambia, the teachers were striking, and everybody on social media was like, that type of narrative that you can be a good slave, and perhaps when you die, they will decorate your grave with nice flowers.
That is messed up.
So this.
Now, let me ask you a question. Would you consider Gambians? Would you consider us New Gambian as stop it? As in, it's only because there's a different. You see a different facade of Gambia on social media, but when you come, because I know when you come to the country and you see the way people live, the way they go about their businesses, it's different from from the picture that's painted on social media.
The truth is that the Gambian is a very sad being. In that they have
we're very sad beings.
They have beaten the resistance out of us.
Okay.
Jawara came, useless policies, didn't do anything, laid the foundation for a dictatorship. Honestly, if you're going to have conversations about this country,
Yes.
we need to be very honest. People have this idealistic, romantic notion of Jawara's days. No. He
You
laid
need
the foundation.
Sakumalo free that one. Come on, $50
You
still
really
that
believe
one.
that? And,
You know
and
that.
then Yaya Jammeh came.
Wow.
And then Yaya Jammeh came, and we all know what happened. Now the Gambian is at a crossroads whether to move towards a resistance that will guarantee their life, to live a dignified life in this country, or we can choose to take the highway of just being meek, submissive, knee-bending, prostrating people who wouldn't go for theirs. You work in a place, you demand better working conditions, better wages, time, that you have like proper working conditions. It's not you're not begging anybody. You are asking justly what's yours. If you are a citizen and your government is messing up, you ask them to be better. You are not begging them. People are like, yeah, why don't you? I don't support any political party, because I feel one of the biggest problems we have in this country is political parties. A country that is so poor, where people die of curable disease. And miss me with God kills people. No, God doesn't kill people. People kill people. People die because of bad
Very
policies.
true. Very true.
People die because there is no medicine or drugs in the hospital. People in a country where people die of curable diseases, where when the rain comes, a lot of people get displaced because the wind just and the rain destroys their houses. A country where education, people go from grade 1 to 12, they can't even speak proper English.
University,
exactly.
Yeah, very
So
sad.
you have a country like that, and all you want to do is be divided in different political parties and keep fighting each other whilst the enemy keeps eating us up. So this is what we need. We need to really have a soul-searching conversation about things in this country, whether it is the working class relations to the managerial class, or the citizens' relation to the government, or how parents bring up their kids in this country. We create these meek creatures, beat resistance out of them. Like, you have to agree. So you have in the Gambia, you at home, you have demigods, which are your parents, always perfect.
Demigods.
It's true. We know this is true. Growing up, yeah, exactly.
Wow.
I'm not saying you're gonna go disrespect your parents, but at the end of the day, we must realize these are mere human beings. They make mistakes.
True.
They are wrong. But if growing up, I never thought my parents will be wrong with anything. Whatever they say is gospel. Right? And then you go from that, from the house as an institution of the family. You go into the institution of the educational system, and the teacher is a god. He comes with this banking form of education, dumps things into your head, gives you tests, go home. And so from that you go to you apply and get a job, and the boss is your god. So you're constantly policed by these human gods.
That is messed up.
And then you have the big god up there somewhere, and you're worshiping him, and he's telling you, you're poor. Well, it's okay, you are meant to be poor. You are meant to be, it's not God who makes people poor. It is a system called capitalism that manufactures poverty and huge pockets of poor people across the globe so that it can benefit the few people on this earth. Like the billionaires of this world own almost 65% of the world's wealth. A few people, when somebody's struggling just to get a meal. And then you have the nerve to tell me it's God who makes people poor. No, it's not God. Poverty itself is big business. It's a very huge, glamorous business.
True.
There is no rich person without a poor person, and vice versa, because it's a dialectical relationship of the servant and the master. So these are the conversations we need to be having.
You should study psychology.
This is
Who? Why do I have to study psychology?
let me ask you a question before we have a few minutes before we get to sign out. There's so many things I've learned from this sit with you. The question is, what exactly is you, Alieu, as a brand doing to make sure that there's an awakening, basically?
That's the problem. I'm not a brand. I'm a soul. I'm a human being. Capitalism wants to brand and commodify everything. I refuse to be a brand, a profit tag, a statistic, a number, I am just a human being. I want us to realize that we can be human and deeply flawed and deeply perfect and deeply imperfect. We could be human in all of what it comes with it, without the makeup, without the glamorous designers.
No, you're gonna have to say that makeup again, though. Just trust me, like, please. You just say without the makeup again.
No. But this is the thing, is that whether you choose to put on a makeup or not, your visibility doesn't equal worth. Visibility doesn't equal worth.
True.
You know, just because you're visible and you're out there, you're on social media, you're in the media, or you're just beautiful face, that doesn't equal your worth. Your worth is that you're human who went through a competition evolutionarily to be here, right? So it's very important that you are here on this earth, and that the most important thing you could do if you're born in a society like this is, how can I sacrifice my life for the betterment of the collective need, or the collective good? But our lives are only important insofar as they're selflessly given to the creation of a new society, a new world. That we walk the line asking questions and seeking answers to create alternative societies. And this is our call. Every generation has a mission. They either fulfill it or betray it, like Fanon said. And the mission of our generation is, how do we defeat capitalism and militarism and imperialism and the patriarchy? How do we defeat every form of domination and structures of oppression that we have in this world, and to create a world where every human being, it matters because they're human, not because they are white or they are black or they're a woman or a man or whatnot. They're valid with or with, if they are gay, whether if they are gay, they are women, they are black, they are whatnot. That people live and they're not defined by their identities, but they're defined by their humanity. You know, and I hope we get to achieve this in our lifetime.
Finally, before we leave, just quickly, I want to know if the Occupy Westfield strike that took place some time ago in the Gambia really got its mission accomplished.
No, it is a continuous process. Like everything is a continuous conversation. You know, life is a set of law. The law of development is that it's continuous motion and continuous evolution. So there is, unless it is irreversible, development is only development when it's irreversible. But we're still seeing the same messed up thing that NAWEC is doing. So we'll say we haven't achieved it, but we are in constant conversation and constant struggle against the forces that create those type of impoverished society.
Thank you so much, Alieu. It was great having you here on the show. Keep doing what you do. You're such an amazing person, very bold with what you believe in and what you do as well. And we hope you're going to inspire other sets of young people who are still doubting themselves because of, you know, how they find themselves in society or how society sees them. We appreciate your time here. Thank you so much, bro. And a big shout out to Prince Koli, who's also listening to us online, and Mr. Gajaga.
Yes, Mr. Gajaga, we'll see you, bro.
He's also enjoying the show. But
I mean, there's so many people that are enjoying the show. There's so many people that have taken their time to listen to us. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you. We'll be back on Wednesday with another set of amazing personalities over here on the show. So don't go anywhere. This is how we keep it real on Mondays and Wednesdays from 2 p.m. all the way to 4. Do not forget that, yes, your number one GSM operator is the reason why we're here. And we appreciate each and every one of you. Yes, to Mr. Alieu, we make sure that, yes, we'll bring him back on the show again. Definitely bring him back on the show.
Yes, it was great having you here. Thank you so much. And thank you to our wonderful listeners and viewers online as well. Have a great day. I'll be back tomorrow on the Jam and Get 'em show from 9.
With Constantiago.
Oh, yeah, we will. Sorry.
Be back.
We'll be back tomorrow. Bye.
Baby, no go look at your face. Follow me, they go on a wave.